Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the PRSA Detroit presents Keeping It Ethical with Influencers. My name is Georgie Kirsten. I'm co-chair of the programming committee here at PRSA Detroit. Thank you all for joining today's live panel discussion. And special thank you to all of our sponsors you saw on the previous screen share. It's through your support that programs like this are possible for our membership. We appreciate you and your continued involvement. This program will be recorded, as you likely heard, and available via the PRSA Detroit YouTube channel for you to revisit or share. And please feel free to join the conversation on Twitter using hashtag PRSA Detroit. Just a couple housekeeping items before we kick off the discussion. Please drop your questions in the chat throughout the program. We'll cover as many as possible at the end of the discussion. And before we begin, I'll read our PRSA Detroit antitrust statement, which we read before all of our events and meetings. PRSA's policy is to comply fully and strictly with all federal and state antitrust laws. Meetings and programs held under the auspices of PRSA must be conducted in a manner that avoids the fact or appearance of conduct that may violate the antitrust laws. Participants are not to discuss industry-wide or individual company prices or matters relating to pricing such as costs, profits, contractual terms and conditions, wages, salaries, market allocation, market shares, sales, or clients, customers, or other competitively sensitive information. Compliance with the antitrust laws is a requirement for PRSA membership, and responsibility for compliance rests with each member. Participants in PRSA meetings and programs have an obligation to terminate any discussion, seek legal counsel's advice, or if necessary, terminate any meeting if the discussion might be construed to raise any antitrust risks. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Nikki Little, Senior Vice President of Franco. She's been in the communications industry for nearly 15 years and is currently the SVP at Franco, an integrated communications agency that works with B2B and B2C companies in a variety of industries. In her role at Franco, she manages the digital team, leads several integrated accounts, and is part of the company's executive leadership group and oversees all agency marketing efforts. She's the publisher of the Mishcom's report, an e-newsletter for communications professionals in Michigan. Nikki also serves on the board of Impact 100 Oakland County, where she handles email marketing. She and her husband, Mike, live in Huntington Woods with their 8-year-old twin boys, Nolan and Evan. Now I'll hand it over to Nikki so she can introduce our wonderful panelists and begin today's discussion. Nikki, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to be with you all today. I need to update my bio because my twin boys are 9 years old now. So I'll send that for the next time I moderate, but glad to be with everyone. I'm going to give a quick intro here on our panelists, and then we will get into the discussion. First, we have Hajj Flemings, who is a serial entrepreneur, a brand technologist, and CEO and founder of Rebrand X. Rebrand X is building the next generation brands on the internet, which will redefine how cities, small businesses, and people impact the world. His family of brands includes Rebrand Cities, Rebrand Black, Brand Camp University, and Modern Athlete, which is a luxury fashion and wellness brand. Hajj was one of 8 entrepreneurs selected for CNN's Black in America 4, the New Promised Land Silicon Valley documentary with Soledad O'Brien. During the filming of that documentary, he came to understand the lack of access in technology that was creating a permanent underclass in communities of color. In 2017, Hajj launched Rebrand Cities, a global civic design initiative with the audacious goal to get 10,000 businesses online and to eradicate the digital divide with activations in 10 cities in 3 countries. He's also an original investor in PlayVS, which is an esports platform that has raised $107 million. Welcome, Hajj. Thank you for being here. Next, we have Curt McAllister, who is the Midwestern PR manager for Toyota Motor North America. In this role, he's responsible for the day-to-day management of the Midwestern Corporate Communications Office in Detroit. The office oversees PR and media relations efforts for Toyota and Lexus in a 14-state region, which comprises the Great Lakes and Heartland states. He also oversees outdoor communications on a national level, working with 14 different outdoor media guilds. In 2010 and 2011, he was a key spokesperson for Toyota's unintended acceleration crisis. Curt eventually crafted a crisis case study, which he has delivered to numerous professional communications organizations and collegiate PR classes. Prior to joining Toyota, Curt was a divisional VP at John Bailey & Associates and a former award-winning journalist. He's been involved in the PR field for more than 28 years and has amassed more than 90 awards in the PR arena, most of them for work in the automotive sector. And last but not least, we have Sabrina Pare, who is a Detroit-based content creator and consultant who focuses on sustainability and environmental education. Sabrina focuses on sharing tips on how to live an eco-friendlier lifestyle through low-waste living, plant-based eating, gardening, and sustainable flux. Through her content, she's worked with brands to share their message with her audience. And Sabrina has worked on numerous social media campaigns, including Ed, Adidas, and Arm & Hammer. Outside of TikTok, Sabrina is a wellness specialist working for a corporation where she implements environmental wellness programming both at her workplace and in her community. Okay, so now we know a little bit more about our panelists. We're going to jump into the discussion here. So Hajj, I'm going to start with you. How do you ensure selection of an authentic influencer for your brand or service when you're vetting candidates to work with? And then second part of that, is there a checklist of indicators to kind of figure out how a good match exists?
All right, that's a great question. I want to thank you for that and also all the other panelists. So I think there's a lot of things to consider, but I think fit becomes really, really important. Sometimes as brands, we tend to kind of lean towards people who have huge followings without really considering, okay, is it a good fit? So I think that is part of it. Quality of content. You want to select somebody who can produce the quality of content that's going to be in alignment, I guess, with the brand. Also the voice. Is that person somebody who speaks to the same audience and has a similar following? I would say not focusing on people who are oversaturated. Sometimes we pick the same people, and so some of their messaging gets diluted because they represent everybody and they're kind of out there. And so I don't want to take all the oxygen out of the room, but I'll kind of close with this. One thing to think about is sometimes we underestimate micro influencers. And so we just leap to big names. And I'll use myself as a small example. So I do some work with CI Wear. And so we did a post one time, and one of the posts brought 15 people into the store. So like these are warm leads. The average eyeglass sale was about $700. So you can do the math and figure out if you have enough warm lead, can you convert that? I have less than 10,000 followers. And so I say that to say somebody who is an influencer, even though, okay, so a micro influencer is 1,000 to 100,000 I guess followers. And so trying to figure out, like, you can still do great work and you can on both sides, and it can be somebody who can fall into that market. And I think identifying people from a local standpoint, all depending on the brand. So those are just a few things. I want to give everyone else a chance to be able to kind of chime in, but those are some of the things that I would kind of think about. And I think budget, and also kind of looking at their comments and their engagement. Are they radioactive? Do they reply? And those kind of things. Those are just a few points that I would consider.
I love that you said micro influencers, because that's exactly what I was thinking too, as you were talking, right, about not underestimating that power and influence of somebody who may have a smaller size per se, even though 10,000 is not small, right? But that was a great example of how through your authenticity, and it's a brand that makes sense for you to be aligned with, you were then able to influence that number of people to go into the store, which is awesome. But Curt, how do you and your team kind of differentiate between micro, macro, like figuring out the right type of influencer to work with?
Yeah, so what we typically do is, we look at Tagger in terms of, some of our data mining and cultivation. A lot of it's based on relationships we've had before. But as Hajj said, nano and micro influencers have become all the rage because it's not so much about the sheer number, but the impact. The example I'll use is, as you mentioned before, in my bio, I handle outdoor communications. So that's, of course, what we refer to as the hooks and bullet media. And there's a lot of people active in the space, but they haven't got huge followings. Again, they're all falling at 10 to 15,000 realm. But the people that follow them are in the industry as well. So again, when we have placement there, when we have involvement there, we know we're getting the right set of eyeballs.
Right. So Sabrina, I want you to chime in here too. And the next, I think, are kind of a good part question for you, and then Hajj and Curt to jump in on kind of how they approach autonomy from a influencer and influencer management perspective. But Sabrina, you working with brands, how much autonomy do you expect or desire in those brand relationships?
Yeah, I would say, as much as autonomy as possible from my experience is great. Definitely understand that certain points need to be hit, or, there's always like that key messaging that you want to get across, but, it can be challenging if there's like a certain script, that, they want you to use, just because I feel like my audience can tell when it's me saying it or when it's obviously coming, from a brand. And I feel like the content typically does better when it's coming from my own voice. So overall, as much as possible, but it is helpful to also know upfront, like, what are the key things you want me to hit on? And overall, like, what is the goal of this campaign?
You gave us a good example when we were talking yesterday about a brand that I think it was, they kind of forced you to say something specific and you were like, or do something in a certain way, and it just did not come off as authentic. And then you said the content didn't perform as well as it could have. Yeah,
this specific, company, and I had that happen. And, the influencer is, especially in sustainability, network is small. Everyone knows each other and everyone has the same circle. And also we have a lot of the same followers. So when a brand has like 3 influencers say the same script, I mean, people know. So it's really best to not, I would say, do that for sure.
Right. So how do you give that autonomy, Curt, from the brand and corporate perspective, right? But while also, like Sabrina said, giving some guidance on messaging to hit, giving some direction, but like balancing that you want them to be authentic and kind of take their creative liberty with it. But like at the same time, you don't want them to go completely rogue with the content.
Yeah, we respect their own brand of storytelling. So essentially what we do with our influencer programs is, of course, ours is all about product, right? Either Toyota or Lexus product. So we'll give them the product in a loan situation. We'll give them the information. We'll give them our hashtags, and then we just get out of the way. Because I think sometimes you can do a lot of damage if you are over their shoulder and micromanaging their content. First of all, they're not going to appreciate it. And second, they'll probably not work with you again. So we try to give them as much latitude as we can.
Great.
Yeah. I think you both hit on some really, really good points. So I know working with bigger brands can be a challenge, great opportunity, but can be a challenge because you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You have the legal department, you have marketing, you have all of these people who want to chime in. And so trying to balance that. But then there's certain requirements from them that are, if you're dealing with automotive and you're doing a post and you have the tire logo has to be, like those things have to be in alignment. So there's certain things that, that we want to hear from them to make sure that we stay on point and we're creating content that's actually usable, right? Because they're the usability part of this whole piece. So if they're sitting in a vehicle and there's no seatbelt on, then they can't use that content, right? And so there's certain things that we need to know. But on the other side, we want there to be some originality, and you want to have something that is creative, that aligns with you. Because at the end of the day, I always feel like if I'm creating this is just as important for me to make sure that that it's going to land the right way. And so I think that those are some of the things that both sides have to be cognizant of. And also too, I think as an influencer, always want to try to do things that outperform the contract, right? So I want to do things that are going to stand out, things that are going to be unique, things that are going to I always try to see around the corner to maybe present something that brand isn't thinking about, so that it keeps me top of mind in terms of working with them. So I think on the influencer side, we're always trying to figure out how we can create more value so that we can extend that relationship. And so I think there's always this give and take. And when things land and work out well, both sides are happy, and then there's opportunity to be able to grow.
Hajj, I'm going to stick with you for a minute because we have a participant question of, asking you to explain in a little bit more detail, what do you mean by considering whether an influencer is radioactive?
So, so sometimes people say things that are outside of, I'll put it to you this way. So, like I could have an engagement or a campaign and I'm supposed to post something. Outside of that, I might just be posting things on IG stories or just saying things. And it might be things that are politically charged, right? And so for me, I stay away from those kind of statements or stay away from those kind of activities because I know everything that you do, there is no after 5 o'clock, I can say this or I can do stuff. Back in the day, we could do that. Everything that you say is a part of who you are and you're on and the mic is always hot. And so I think being considered that means I tell people you can say whatever you want to say as long as you're willing to pay the price. Right. And so if you say certain things or post certain comments, it can put you in a position to where you could lose opportunities. So just understand that. And if you're willing to go that route and you want to be Howard Stern and there's a market for that, that's great. If that's not you, I would just be considerate of the things that you're talking about and thinking about how these things age, because sometimes they don't always age well.
Great. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about how to know if a relationship isn't working out. So Sabrina, has there been a time, are there any red flags or signs where you're like, this isn't going to work for me. This is not something I want to work on, or a relationship I want to continue in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I think some of the more challenging things I've come across is, typically if you're working with a company, you'll either send a script or a draft video of here's my video. And then typically one round of edits is standard. But it can be frustrating if you they give you some edits, you send the new video, but then they give you more edits that were on the first video. So then you're redoing and, I guess I think too, people don't always realize how much work goes into influencing and production of especially videos, if I have to reshoot, that requires me getting ready, make sure the lighting's good, redoing the captions and the music. It does take a lot of time, even if it is just a simple edit. So just trying to get all the feedback in that first round. For sure, I've definitely had some frustrating times going back and forth. And then I think another thing too that it will make me not want to work with someone again is if the payment, takes a lot longer than what was in the contract. Definitely have had times where it's taken almost 6 months, a year to get paid.
Oh, wow.
Not the standard, but it does happen, and having to chase people down can be really frustrating. It was said, a lot of these companies can be larger, and I understand jumping through those hoops of accounting. It's not always my direct contact that's responsible for the late payment, but I think, paying people on time is obviously super important.
Absolutely. 6 months to a year. Ooh, that's not good. So Curt, can you talk a little bit about influencer campaigns or partnerships that have worked well? And then on the flip side, if there are any that didn't, and kind of building on what Sabrina was saying about what hasn't worked for her when there's too much editing or too many requests or the length of payment. So what's that sweet spot or secret sauce for you and your team for a really win-win relationship with an influencer?
Yeah, for us, it's really, for us, there's really kind of 3 legs to our stool in terms of what we do. So it's usually around new product. It's usually around some of our sponsorships and cooperatives. We have a lot of events, a lot of sponsorships throughout the nation, if there's any way to involve those. And then, of course, thematic things, talking about the changing of the seasons, talking about the holidays, commemorative months or commemorations in general. So those are kind of the basis on the way we approach influencers. Typically, the influencers that do best by us are the ones that involve as much product content as what they're doing on the side. If they're going to an event, if they're going to the grocery store, but again, showing our vehicles in action in terms of their technical acuity, their roadsmanship. Those are the kind of the sweet spots for us. Sometimes we will go back to an influencer and go, you know, it was great that you had a terrific time at the amusement park or at Vail Resorts on our dime, but we could have used a little bit more product content there. So that's the only kind of feedback we ever give them is like, you know, again, whenever we do have a contract with an influencer, we'll talk about expectations in terms of posts and reels and everything. But we always make sure that, hey, show the vehicle in operation and kind of give us, you know, your opinion, because that counts. But, you know, don't forget about the product.
Yeah. For all three of our panelists, and you can kind of approach it from the influencer and then the brand perspective, but like, can you tell us about a time where you had to say no to a partnership or to an influencer, and how did you approach that? I'm going off script here, guys, so bear with me. I know you weren't planned to answer that, but hopefully we can have a discussion about it.
I can start. I think for me, you know, I am pretty picky with my partnerships just because I do focus on like sustainability content. So obviously if the company overall, I don't feel like aligns with my values, you know, I'll typically say no. Or if I just feel like the compensation isn't, you know, fair, or, you know, what I'm asking, or if there's just too many deliverables. I think for myself, I still work full time on top of doing influencing. So I need a little bit of time, like at least a week usually for a video. And sometimes people want like the next day. And for me, it's just probably not going to work out. So those are some times I usually wouldn't move forward.
I think also too, all depending on the vertical, sometimes you have to make choices. So say for instance, if you're doing stuff in the financial space, all right, so if you do something for Chase and the Bank of America comes, it's probably not going to work, right? Or if you're doing something for Cadillac and then Toyota comes along. So sometimes you have to try to make decisions. And I know as entrepreneurs, sometimes we're trying to make sure that there's money coming in the door. And so sometimes people just take the first thing. So I think thinking about that becomes really important. And what do you want to be connected to? I think about personal brand and all those other kind of things as well. And so are these brands that I want to be connected to, because I'm trying to think down the road. And so I think those are things that that should be considered before you just take something. So, you know, I would say don't be thirsty. And so, you know, it's easier said than done, but try to identify, I'd rather be slow than get out too far ahead of myself and just take anything. So I, you know, that would just be something that I would think about.
Curt, did you ever have an influencer you worked with once and then they came back and wanted to do more, but you and your team didn't feel like it was a fit?
Yeah, there's been times, again, it all based on ROI, based on their content. You know, we always make the joke in the early days of influencing, everyone used to use the term mommy bloggers, right? Which of course no one says anymore. No. But in those early days, the kind of the joke was that once you give, in our case, a minivan to a mommy blogger, in their mind, they've got a vacation vehicle till the end of time because they're going to keep coming back looking to get into that same product. So you have to be cognizant of what their intention is, and again, what ultimately the ROI is in terms of that loan or that opportunity.
Great. So somebody asked this question in the chat, and it's good timing because we were also going to talk about payments. So deciding when to pay a flat fee or a strict fee to an influencer as opposed to giving access to product or services, whether that's to a vehicle to use for an extended period of time, right? Or eyewear, Hajj, that you're then able to keep and use and talk about your relationship. So let's talk about that a little bit of, again, kind of what's that threshold? When are you willing to give strict payment? Maybe Sabrina, let's talk to you there. Kind of how do you approach that? Do you ask for payment? Do you get product services? Is it a combination?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a combination. Typically, if a brand's approaching me, I will ask for compensation. But there are times where I will do it for product, exchange. It just kind of depends on like what the product is and like if I already use them or just kind of how I feel about it overall. But I would say compensation is usually my first route.
And something else to think about too is that also know that the audience doesn't know whether you're getting paid or not, right? And so sometimes there might be an opportunity where you can take that and turn that into compensation, I guess, with that brand or with another brand. And so there are times that people take opportunities and they turn it into more value, right? But I think also too, the other part is knowing your value and figuring, okay, is this something that I want to work to grow the relationship with or not, right? And then also thinking about other things like, so what's going to be the usage of this? Is this original content? Is this content that we're creating? Are they, so I think understanding contract law and understanding the things that are written in the agreement and what are you signing up for? Those things are things that as you do it more, all of us have been in business. We've all gotten burned at some point in time. And then we realize, okay, all right, I left money on the table and I learned from it. And so some things you just learn from just doing it and you figure out, okay, all right, this wasn't the best agreement, but I learned from it. Regardless of what you agree to, you still have to, I believe, overperform and do the job, even if you are pissed because you got underpaid or you found out someone else got paid more. Still do your job because you're building your reputation in the industry.
Hajj, there's a question in the comments following up on that, asking, is it ethical if the audience doesn't know if you're getting paid or not? Because from an ethics standpoint, from an FTC guidelines standpoint, right, influencers have to disclose in some way, shape, or form about the partnership and if they're getting paid, if a product's for free. So we can talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So that, so on platforms like there's stuff that says like paid partnership. And so it is important, I guess, to know that. In my mind, I feel like, regardless of whether that is disclosed or not, I feel like if somebody is pushing products, there's a reason. Sometimes they like the product, but I automatically try to look at things from the reality of, okay, all right, this person is probably receiving some kind of benefit, but technically it should be identified. But I still think it's still up to the person to be able to kind of read between the lines and figure out, okay, all right, does this person really believe in what they're doing, right? Or in this product? And so like when I look at some of this stuff, I'll look at people and they'll push your product, but then they're going and they're doing something outside of this because I happen to know them or happen to see them out in public. So I do look for consistency every now and then, but I think it from an ethical standpoint, absolutely. But I think you have to kind of follow your gut on if you think that it's authentic and probably more from that lens.
So Curt, since you work for a large corporation, what is what's your process when you're putting together agreements for influencers, and what is your ask to them in terms of disclosure?
Sure. So for the sake of transparency for both parties, they have to use hashtags like hashtag sponsor, hashtag partner, in some cases, hashtag pay. So corporately at our headquarters, we do have what we refer to as Toyota and Lexus ambassadors, and they are paid influencers. There's only a small handful of those. What I do in the regional offices and all my colleagues do across the country, we still look at influencers as almost earned media. So a lot of times, if they aren't amenable to a vehicle loan, maybe a gift card to cover incidentals and a swag bag, if they want more than that, then a lot of times we'll say, well, okay, we're going to have to part company here, but maybe we'll circle back and maybe re-examine this another time. But in this situation, we don't do a whole lot of payola in terms of what we do regionally. And again, even what we do on a national basis is very small in terms of pay to play.
I think how do you, go ahead.
Go ahead, you go ahead. Also too, I think that as an influencer too, like we want to make sure that those posts don't feel like they feel over commercialized as well too. So even when I'm posting, I want it to feel like it still has an organic kind of feel, even though we have a partnership. So I don't want it to look extra scripted, or if there's too much of the content that saying paid stuff in there. So I think that there's, somewhat of a balance as well too. So I wanted to kind of just chime that in, as well. Yeah.
Sabrina, I was going to ask on that. How do you disclose your paid partnerships? I know TikTok's the primary platform that you're using. So how do you kind of make sure that what you're doing is ethical and then kind of disclosing that paid relationship?
Yeah, so typically the brand will ask you, but even if they don't, I'll always, there's like a toggle on TikTok, so you don't even have to use like a hashtag anymore, but when the video comes up, it will say like, this is a paid video. And then if it's gifted, I'll usually just hashtag gifted as well, just because I feel like, yeah, I do feel like it's the ethical thing to do. So I typically always do it just to, be safe. And I just feel like it's just even for your followers to keep that trust in you, that you're not just like trying to be shady.
Right.
Also too, I think it benefits the influencer, right? So when people see paid or other brands see paid, again, like they don't know how much you got paid. They're like, okay, all right, they're getting paid for these posts. And so I think that there's that intrinsic benefit of just seeing the word paid partnership in there. So.
Right. So when it comes to which party does the outreach for the partnership, whether it's the brand or the influencer, you talk about that a little bit, Curt, because you obviously work for a brand that is very, very well known, right? So you're not working on having influencer relationships to build up brand recognition per se. So would you say that you get approached more frequently from influencers who are looking for the partnerships, or is your team going out and finding people who align with the brand, or combo?
Yeah, actually, we do more outreach than we regard in terms of inquiries. So, we've been doing this kind of influencer relations for about better part of 5 to 6 years. And at any given point in time now, we have at least three influencer campaigns going on in a given month. So we have a team that does the outreach, again, kind of based on those 3 legs of the tool I talked about earlier, about new product, about sponsorships, cooperatives, and again, anything that's thematic or seasonal. We're always on the outlook for those influencers, particularly those ones that we haven't engaged in the past. So yeah, we do more really proactive outreach than we do. I mean, I'm sure corporately, maybe we receive some inquiries about, hey, how can I get involved with Toyota or Lexus? But at least from a regional standpoint, we do more outreach than we receive inquiries.
How about you, Sabrina? Are you reaching out more, or do you feel like more brands are coming to you proactively?
Yeah, I would say more brands are probably coming towards me. I feel like fortunate in that. I think, part of that too is kind of how my account kicked off, was because I never planned to be an influencer or anything. It kind of just happened organically over the pandemic. I was sharing sustainable swaps. I wasn't getting paid. So I think that's kind of how it started. Was I started sharing brands that I've already was using, and then I started to build those relationships. So I am pretty lucky that I get reached out to, but if there is someone I'm really interested in working with, I will, just send them a DM usually. And there have been times where it's evolved into working together, partnership. So I always encourage people that if they're interested in like getting into influencing, to just like reach out. I feel like a lot of companies are looking for people who like want to promote their product and actually use it. It makes it a lot easier when the person already uses the product and likes it than probably having to find people. So I do a little bit of both, but luckily have been reached out to quite a few times.
I want to build on what you just said. So, I have more brands reach out to me than I reach out to them. But I think to her point, like brands that I already use, what I'm saying? I mean, there's times where I'll just tag them because I'm just wearing the product and I enjoy wearing the product, and it's turned into opportunity. And so I remember one of the brands come back and saying, we were just looking through the hashtags and the people we were already paying, we like your content better. And so it turned into an opportunity. So I didn't DM them. I just tagged them because I was wearing it, and it turned into an opportunity. So some can be passive, and some can be like more direct, but they can still create opportunities. And so I think she brought up a very, very good point. So, you know, so I think it can definitely go both ways.
Yeah. What you said too about reaching out, Sabrina, that made me think of another question, because TikTok doesn't make it very easy to reach out to influencers via the platform, depending on settings. And, you know, it's not like Instagram, it's not like email, right? So do you put your email out there? Do you have a website where people can come to find you? Like, how do you make it easy or possible for brands to reach out to you?
Yeah, TikTok isn't the greatest because if you're not mutual friends, like
right.
the message goes into some box that honestly I don't even know how to get to. So I just put my email in my bio. I've been through like TikTok, what are they called? Like Learn on TikTok group, where it was like a group of creators in the beginning of the age of TikTok. But that was something they recommended. Just put your email in the bio. And I think that just makes it easier for everyone. And also linking your Instagram to TikTok too. I do get like DMs on my Insta, but definitely just prefer email because I feel like DMs can get lost and it's easy if I have a media kit, I can just send it through email. So definitely prefer that way of communication for sure.
Let's go back to the agreements for a minute. So, Curt, does your legal team get involved with contracts and agreements with influencers? Do they need to review and approve everyone? Like, what does that process look like with your company?
Yeah, I mean, we do have kind of a basic template about expectations, but a lot of those agreements are tailor-made based on the influencer and the relationship we have with them. A lot of times we'll say, if this person is proficient in, say, Facebook and Instagram, we'll say, well, listen, per the arrangement, we expect these many posts, static posts, these many reels, you know, within this time frame. So it's more deadline based and more expectation based than legality. We just want to make sure that they're held to their end of the bargain. I mean, in the past, I can only think of one time I was ever really ghosted by an influencer, and that's because they had a personal dilemma come up. So again, it's more or less guidelines than it is legality on our part.
So go ahead, Hajj.
I know also too, sometimes dealing with celebrities can be somewhat of a challenge because getting content from them on time, like, you know, I know if it's a huge, you know, and they're getting paid a lot of money, all that stuff kind of works out. But there are times where it's not this huge like campaign. And so celebrities can be a challenge, right? Also too, all depending on the brand that you're working with, they can get really granular in terms of the expectation. And so making sure that you understand what you're signing up for becomes important. I know in certain contracts I've had, like they're expecting specific people that we said we're going to bring to the table to actually repost. I'm talking celebrities. And then I got to make sure that these celebrities actually reshare the content, things like that, you know. So just making sure that you're really clear on that, because that can really put you in a tight situation where you're depending on a celebrity to do something that you've contractually agreed with, you know. So there's a lot of other kind of nuances. And so I think that becomes like really important, just kind of just understanding that and making sure that you can live up to whatever you agree to.
Yeah, I wanted to add to, like, from the influencer side, I feel like it's really nice when companies are upfront about like what is in the contract, because like I feel like I've been burned when like I was giving away my ad usage rights and didn't know, or I mean, I think that's really a big one. I feel like it's kind of snuck into a lot of contracts, and I'll have to specifically look for it and be like, hey, like, you know, I charge extra for that. Or I feel like,
can you explain what that means, Sabrina, for anyone who's not sure what you mean by ad usage?
Yeah. So typically, like, you know, if a company reaches out and they're like, we want a video, and, you know, I have a flat rate typically. But for ad usage, that's if they want to take the video and maybe boost it on Instagram or TikTok or whitelist it. I feel like there's a bunch of different terms people use, but and use that content to, you know, generate sales typically. And For myself and a lot of other people, I know we charge for that because I feel like it, they're using the content more than just your audience. It's then going to additional audience. And I have, there have been times where it's been in the contract in my early days, and I didn't always catch it. So that can be hard, but I feel like I appreciate when companies up front are like, hey, we want 3 months ad usage up right away. So trying to think if there's anything else that's major. Yeah, I think that's the big one.
Okay. So when it comes to working with PR communications professionals, Curt, what does your team do? You already said that you like to give the influencer autonomy, right? Like you have the agreement, right? You give some structure, but you like to let them kind of have the creative liberty. So is there anything else that you do or you recommend other PR comms professionals do to really make it a good relationship with influencers?
Actually, from the get-go, just lay out what our expectations are with in terms of when they come along with that product loan or that experience, be it going to like Vail Resorts or some other property we sponsor, and then actually just maintaining that relationship. While we like to work with a dearth of influencers, if you've got one or two that are really good, there's nothing wrong with going back to the well a couple of times and maintaining that relationship. Like typical media relations, you shouldn't see an opportunity as being one and done. You should go back and maintain and nurture those relationships. So again, not only for future campaigns, but just for good business sense.
How about you, Hajj, with your brand relationships? What are you looking for from them to set up a win-win campaign or partnership?
What I try to do is I try to figure out what are things that I'm already doing with my community, right? So I know we did a piece with Hallmark, and it was tied to Father's Day. I already kind of do something with Father's Day anyway, and so I was able to kind of tie it in it being like their second highest performing post in Facebook, like Father's Day. And so, but it was because there was something I was already going to do, and I was able to kind of tie that in. So because I knew if that performed well, it then creates other opportunities. So I try to think of things that I'm already naturally, organically doing. I think that becomes important. And I'm always trying to figure out, are there ways that we'll be able to continue to build the relationship? And so even giving them ideas, I think are important. I try to, if I'm coming up with an idea, can I kind of storyboard the idea and kind of give it to them? Because say, for instance, if I'm shooting something and I'm not just shooting it on my iPhone and I'm having somebody else come in and help me to shoot this, I don't really want to reshoot that, right? So, because then it gets into other kind of costs. So I'm always trying to think about how to story tell to be able to continue to brand build with them down the road. And so those are the things that I'm trying to build into that story, are things that are naturally a part of who I am and things that I've done that I think have a chance to be able to have traction. And I think the other part is always trying to outperform. And when I say outperform, I'm not saying if they're paying you for X to go, then spend 10X in terms of energy and time. I don't recommend that. But trying to create something that you believe is, even though they ask for this, I want to give just a little extra just so I stand out.
Anything else to add there, Sabrina, when you're looking for what can we as professionals do set you up for a successful relationship?
Yeah, I think, sometimes just jumping on like an intro call, obviously everyone's busy, but I feel like it really helps make that personal connection, speaking to someone, because I know a lot of our work is done through email. I think too, like, I guess from the influencer side, I like to always follow up, be like, hey, even if they don't ask for the metrics, give them the metrics, thank them, just being nice overall. I think sometimes people forget there's like another human on that side of the screen. So just remembering that, just being friendly, nice overall, I think, but yeah, setting up that call or whatever, I think can really help build that relationship.
Yeah, great. Well, if anybody watching has any questions, feel free to send them through. We've been going through a couple that have come through during the discussion. There is a question here. We touched on this a little bit, but maybe we can reiterate or elaborate, but the different ways to demonstrate ad and partnership transparency. So we talked about the hashtags, we talked about, on TikTok, there's a toggle that you can turn on to designate if it's a paid partnership. You can do the same thing on Instagram. So are there any other ways that you recommend disclosing that relationship?
So I know in Instagram, I know there's also the opportunity to have like collaborator, right? Mm-hmm. And so, if that's one way, hopefully that brand is posting from their profile as well too. I think those are things that are, that are key. Obviously you're going to tag them in there. Those are all kind of, I guess low hanging fruit, but just kind of that aspect in terms of like the collaborator piece is one which everybody kind of sees in IG.
So that's a good point, Hajj. Curt, when you have influencer relationships, are you then resharing their content onto the Toyota brand channels as well?
Typically not. Typically, unless someone our social media team sees something they like, but we typically don't do that. In terms of what Hajj talked about, hashtags, part of our mandate, again, for the sake of transparency, again, that hashtag partner, hashtag sponsor, we make sure those hashtags are mentioned before you go hashtag Toyota, hashtag Lexus, hashtag whatever the product they're driving is. So that's for us, that's pivotal in terms of showing the relationship and the nature of the relationship, that those have to be the first two hashtags out of the gate.
Anything else there, Sabrina?
No, I don't think so. I think we all covered it.
Okay. Well, if there are any other questions, feel free to send them through, but I think we hit through everything we were going to talk about with the panelists. So Hajj, Curt, or Sabrina, any last words of wisdom or recommendations that you want to share?
One question I think that we kind of broached a little bit was, I guess, maybe horror stories, influencer horror stories.
Sure.
Yeah. If there's any cautionary tales. So again, I'll just bring one up. And Hajj actually mentioned about it early on, about really when you started exploring and doing data mining on a prospective influencer, you have to look at all their channels. You have to look at all their content. We last year worked with a young lady from Tennessee who was in the outdoor space, and she was family lady, and we gave her a product and she did a great job with it. She put it all over Instagram. She put it all over Reels. We got really good impression rates. And what we didn't do is we didn't do enough looking into her Facebook page, because sometimes, between platforms, people kind of, their content can be a little bit different sometimes between platforms. Well, this lady was very political in nature on her Facebook page. And so a lot of times she would replicate her Instagram content, but a lot of times she would intertwine that with her views from her side of the aisle. And what had happened is that one of those viewers of her Facebook page had disagreed with what she said, and she actually reached out to Toyota's 1-800 consumer hotline and say, listen, if Toyota's going to interact with someone like this, I never want to put Toyota on my consideration list. So that was really a good learning point for us, that when we look at influencers, we have to look at them maybe deeper than just the content. We have to look at maybe some of those other channels where maybe the real person comes out and maybe some of their views. And again, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle she was on. The fact that she upset somebody because of her own content is something that we have to examine and maybe steer clear of in the future.
Right. Someone asked in the comments about the future of influencers. If anybody wants to touch on that, do you see influencer brand relationships growing, evolving? I think what you said in the beginning of this, Hajj, of the micro influencers, I think that there's been a big trend over the past few years, is like, you don't need to go to the Kim Kardashian style level of influencer to get traction. And sometimes that doesn't work as well too, right? So somebody with a smaller following or more micro following, but somebody who already has an affinity to the brand is going to come off a lot more genuine, authentic, will drive action and results more than somebody who maybe never used a product, but just slaps up an Instagram post.
Yeah. So what I would, I want to encourage people who are on this call. Sometimes we think everybody else's ice is colder than our ice, right? And so what I would encourage them is if there's something that you're passionate about or something that you're interested in, to try it, and to put yourself in a position to where you can create amazing content that can turn into an opportunity. And maybe this is a pathway that you can kind of go down. Just because I think that there's a lot of opportunities out there. I think also too, understanding algorithms are important. So if you look at Instagram and TikTok, the algorithm changes. And so the content that they push, and you want to make sure that when you're creating content that you understand if they're pushing reels versus pushing still photos, right? So understanding that can help you to get more traction on your on the content that you create. So I think kind of keeping up with that, because that stuff changes all the time. And so I think that's something that people should definitely, they should be cognizant of. But I think also bring your own style and personality to the table. And I think those are the things that are really going to stand out in terms of you being able to connect with these brands, because these brands really need to work with people who are connected to a very cool or interesting community that they want to target.
Yeah, to add on to, I think for the future of influencing, I feel like it's definitely going to be here for a while. I think, when you think of millennials and Gen Z in particular, a lot of us I don't have cable. I don't think a lot of my friends have cable, and the traditional commercials or marketing that I think used to work or happen don't really resonate with a lot of, Gen Z and millennials. And we get most of our news and everything from TikTok or, any social media. So I think that the influencer space is going to continue to grow. I think there is like a fine line, because I feel like a lot of people do have a following, and at what point is everyone their own like micro influencer? But I think, there are those people, especially the micro influencers, where people do feel connected to and trust. I feel like honestly, once you get past a certain point, you almost lose that connection with your community once you get to a certain following, unless you're very, very, active and can respond to a lot of comments. But I think almost like you were saying, Hajj, I feel like micro influencers can be very beneficial because they have the trusted audience, and they're still seem like a real human and not just this influencer that's a little bit inflated and lives a lifestyle that most people don't. But I think it's going to continue to grow, and we really saw it during the pandemic. I know so many people that left their full-time jobs to be full-time influencers, and it's really created a great space for people to kind of follow their dreams and create content. And it's like a form of art for a lot of people, which I think is a great thing. So I hope it continues to grow, and companies, continue to see the value in it. Because I know I've definitely been influenced from videos and TikTok. So, but I can't say I've ever really been influenced through much, TV, radio, things like that.
Corporately speaking, as traditional media continues to shrink and consolidate in this country, I think you're going to see influencer relations on the rise. In fact, at Toyota, we actually use the term citizen journalist as much as we use influencer, because that's really what it is. Everyone who's got some sort of platform is a citizen journalist. And so we even have sometimes press programs will have the traditional press junket for a new product involving automotive business media, and then on that weekend bring in influencers. So that's how much value we see in influencers. And again, we think if anything, it's going to continue to rise over the years, not shrink.
Yeah. Just to kind of, add on to it, even when I'm looking for fashion stuff, I'll go on Instagram and I'll look at hashtags. I'm just So I'll go on a social media platform to look for my news or look for trends in pop culture. And that's where I go before I'll go to a trusted media outlet per se.
Okay, I'm going to sneak in this final question in the last 2 minutes. What is the best partnership you've had to date? And if you don't want to name the brand from Hajj and Sabrina, you don't have to do that. But if anybody wants to touch on what like a successful partnership looked like.
I can share one. I love all the brands that I work with. I love them all equally.
They're watching this, Hajj.
But we've done a lot of work with Cadillac. And so, we've had a chance to, I just think that, in general, the work that we do is not just what can I make, but how can I help other people? And so I know we did a campaign with them where we were able to give away $50,000 to a Black business in the city of Detroit. And then 2 of those businesses went on to win, Detroit Demo Day, which is the biggest pitch competition in the city. And so the work that we did through Cadillac and Thrivent was amazing because of the impact it had, not for me, but for the businesses, and it helped them to scale. And I really appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree. I've been a lot of the companies I've worked with have been really great. I think one that comes to the top of my head is their name's Ethik, and they do like shampoo bars, and they've just always been very easy to work with, don't really come back with any edits, give me a lot of creative freedom, and pay on time. Those are like the main things, and then we'll be good. Like, I definitely don't mind, any type of criticism, and open to feedback always, but they're just always like a smooth one that comes to mind. But overall it's way more positive. The struggle, like the ones that haven't been so great, are definitely outliers. I feel like overall everyone's been pretty great.
All right, I think that's it for us.
Thank you, Nikki, for being a great moderator. Thanks, Hajj, Curt, and Sabrina, for your participation. This was an awesome panel, and thanks to all who joined. I'm going to stop the recording, and you'll be able to find it on PRSA Detroit's YouTube. So thank you again. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for having
us.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.